The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
We're very, very concerned because this is very out of character. And we can't get in touch with his wife, which is probably the more concerning thing.
I can hear kids inside, and I swear I think I heard one yell.
What's changed since the last person I talked to?
There's a body. There's a body.
There's a body inside?
Yeah.
From divorce to alleged killer, the ex-husband of Monique Tepe arrested in her murder and the murder of her husband, Dr. Spencer Tepe. We're on the ground in Ohio, where defendant Michael McKee is expected in court. Plus an arrest, but no clear answers. So what did Spencer Tepe's colleagues know? The looming questions that remain in the investigation. Plus, the cheating fire chief murder trial resumes today. Friends of the former battalion chief explaining to the jury why he didn't want a divorce. And a victim of a conspiracy? What? That is what defendant Nick Reiner's reportedly thinking behind bars. We'll talk about it. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Monday morning to you and welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. I missed you over the weekend. We put together a great show for you, so let's get it started as we always do. Grab that cup of coffee. It's time for my opening statement. Why? And why now? If Monique Tepe's ex-husband murdered her and her current husband, Dr. Spencer Tepe, why did he do it? Dr. Spencer and Monique Tepe just celebrated their 5th wedding anniversary. They got married in the house in which they lived with their 2 small children and their dog. Monique and her ex-husband were only married for 2 years, and they've been divorced since 2017. So what happened in the present that allegedly motivated these murders? The defendant is a vascular surgeon. Defendant Michael McKee, Monique Tepe's ex-husband, is a vascular surgeon. This guy saves people's lives, yet police say that he drove down to Columbus, Ohio from Chicago, Illinois to personally end 2 lives. If what detectives say is true, why would this guy throw away everything he's worked for to break the law and in the process destroy his own life and his own career? The why and the why now, my friends, are the biggest questions I have this morning. If this guy did this, well, I sure hope prosecutors will pursue the harshest penalty that the law allows for him. The killer showed the Tepes no mercy, and therefore he should be shown no mercy either. That's my opening statement. Let me know if you like it. Right now, time for your daily docket.
What reluctance did Kevin West convey to you about divorcing Mark?
Financial, losing half of his stuff and half of his pension.
In Washington, we got testimony resuming at noon Eastern in the cheating fire chief murder trial for defendant Kevin West. In New Jersey, we've got opening statements beginning in the Mansions murder trial of defendant Paul Canero. Court starts up at 8:30 there. We'll go in there live when it begins. And in California, we've got sentencing expected for defendant Maya Hernandez at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. This is the woman who was getting filler at the time that her children were in her hot car outside of the doctor's office. Right now, we turn to your top story. The ex-husband charged in the murders of Dr. Spencer and Monique Tepe is expected in court today. Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas is live for us in Columbus, Ohio. He's outside of the Franklin County Municipal Courthouse this morning. Cody, good morning to you. Share with us, please, the latest on defendant Michael McKee.
Well, good morning to you too, Julie. Yeah, crazy story after a 10-day manhunt. Michael McKee arrested. This is Monique Tepe's ex-husband, arrested for the double murders of Spencer and Monique. And here's the kicker, Julie. According to court documents, police say they saw Michael's car in the area shortly before the murders and then leave shortly after. All of that caught on surveillance. And then they eventually tracked that car all the way back up to Rockford, Illinois. And as you mentioned in your opening statement, Julie, he is a vascular surgeon in Illinois, in Chicago, to be exact. So just a very horrific story here. Now, he has a court appearance set today. Now, he had to appear in Illinois first because they had to start the formal extradition process. And then he'll come right here behind me in Columbus, Ohio, to the Franklin County Municipal Court where a bond will be set. And then this case will move on to a grand jury to see if any more charges will be filed. And then he'll be in court for there and then he'll have to go to a grand jury for a potential indictment to see if those additional charges will be filed, Julie.
Right, Cody. Cody, any particulars, if you know, about what time we expect him to make the appearance and when the extradition process is expected to get underway?
Well, I was reading and researching. He said he had to make his first appearance in Illinois, of course, before being extradited down here. Now, that hearing was scheduled for this morning, so it could be any day this week or even later this afternoon, depending on how quickly that goes up in Illinois before he gets down here to Columbus, Julie. But again, he has to go through there, then it goes to that grand jury to see if more additional charges will come on. But very horrific story, Julie. And you know, it's very interesting because the house had no signs of forced entry. Now, it was one of those houses that had a keypad, a key code to get into the front door. So that begs the question, how did he get inside this house?
Right, Cody, certainly one of the most troubling questions in this case. Someone had to have known that code in order to enter. So if it was Monique Tepe's ex-husband who did this, how then did he get the code? Cody, I understand that there was an opportunity for friends and family to pay their respects for Dr. Spencer and Monique Tepe on Sunday. Tell us, please, a little bit about what happened.
Yeah, absolutely, Julie. You know, this community just really shaken by this because this is an up-and-coming community in Columbus, Ohio, in the Wineland Park area. They lived in a beautiful home. They had a celebration of life and visitation yesterday before having that was early in the afternoon. Then they had a vigil later in the evening, people coming out in droves showing their respects, you know, leaving flowers at the home, leaving flowers at the visitation, and just really, you know, just reflecting on such a horrific crime in this area and hoping that, you know, it doesn't happen again. But they are very thankful that somebody is finally in custody after this more than a week and a half manhunt leading all the way back to Monique's ex-husband, which is just you know, it's just the worst part about it. They're all the way back out of state in Illinois, but they're very happy that someone is in custody now.
Most certainly. Our love and prayers go out to everyone who loved this couple so much. Cody Thomas, live for us in Columbus, Ohio. Thank you so much for that report this morning. We want to continue the discussion now. Let's bring in retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer and attorney and former SLED agent Tommy Pope. Good morning to you both. Jen, let me begin with you with that troubling question that Cody and I were just talking about. How might Dr. Michael McKee, the defendant who's accused in this case, have obtained the code information to the front door of his ex-wife's home?
Well, you know, very early on, it was so concerning that they had their wedding there. When you have your wedding there, imagine all the people who might have been exposed to that code. Everything from friends, family, associates, and also the caterers and so on and so forth. They were married, even though it's been about 9 years ago that they've been divorced. They were married. They likely have many mutual friends. And I just wonder if somewhere in different conversations, he at some point obtained that from a wedding goer, from a mutual friend.
Oh, that's a good thought. That's a really good thought, Jen. Yeah. Tommy, let me ask you about another thought. Could this have been obtained through a hacking? I keep thinking for some reason it's stuck in my head, a hacking of a phone or some device to get a front door code. Thoughts on that?
I would be surprised. I think you would see that more often, you know, if that was the case by people that didn't know each other, just criminals in general. You know, relationship-wise, you know, even them being married, like Jen said, there may be relationship. It might be the one we always use, you know, where she always used her birthday or whatever, if that's the case. And I was thinking, I know this happened at the middle of the night, but according to how their relationship is played out over the years, You can't say that he wasn't given, to drop something by, according to how testy their relationship was. I see they have a Ring camera at the door. So if it was the front, hopefully, I could even see him knocking on the door in the middle of the night with my car broke down and I didn't know who else to ask, because all he really needs is the door open to get a pistol involved and back him on and get him on into the house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're both raising such good points. Was he given it? If it was an amicable divorce and there were no problems, was this someone that was trusted? And like you said, we know police have said they believe the couple was killed on the top floor, but we haven't heard whether or not they answered the door in the middle of the night. So, those are all really good theories that you both postured here about this. Jen, I want to go back to you. The idea of the why now is so troubling, I think, for a lot of people. I was just doing a discussion on the radio a few minutes ago with my friends back in Pittsburgh at the Odyssey station there, and they were saying, if she was divorced since 2017 from this man, why now? What do you think about that time frame, please?
Well, I find it very interesting. If you look back at their divorce, it was amicable. He actually got to keep the home. There was no alimony or any sort of money awarded. In addition, she says in those papers that I guess she paid for her own wedding ring. So it was a really clean split. They had a private judge. That's typically where you just work it out behind, the headlines, right? And work out your divorce and it's over. But this is what I think. When I look back as an example on different cases I had where grudges were held, if you look at a recent case, the Brown University shooting, that guy, Valente, held a grudge for 3 years. He had multiple plans for going and killing his former colleague and committing the Brown shooting. I think this was festering and festering and festering over years, and the happier she got and the perfect life she had, the more he wanted to destroy it.
Oh, Jen, I think you're right on the money. I think you're right on the money there. And you both know this, and Tommy, legally looking at those divorce documents, there may not be anything on the face that says the relationship was dangerous or volatile or anything like that. But we know from experience, what's on paper isn't always true, right? Do you think it's possible, Tommy, that maybe he exhibited signs of abuse or violence or something early on that made her say, ooh, I got to get away and I don't want to anger him more. We're not going to put any of this in. I'm just going to get out. And maybe he was still trying to exert control. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, digging into it, you look, Garth Brooks, because most divorces have country music as the background music for it. So Garth Brooks said, she's going to make it, he never will. And I think if you look at a divorce, the fact that it was amicable, the one that doesn't want the divorce is the one that seems to carry it. She's moved on with her life. And as far as it being a length of time, it's like Jen said, there may have been a triggering event. There may have been one Facebook post where she's just finally gotten so happy that he can't stand it anymore. Or they did this, or, and you don't know what's cooking in his head. And you're right, Julie, it might not be in the paper. And the fact that it was amicable from a division standpoint, in some scenarios may trend that she just wanted out, and, wasn't worried about support or things of that nature. And so I think, as you guys have said, I think it festered and finally he brought it to fruition.
Mm-hmm. Right. This just doesn't suddenly happen. It's like something in the middle is missing. It's missing. Jen, in terms of a triggering event or something that is in the present, thoughts on the 5-year wedding anniversary that we know was about to happen here?
Well, I don't think that's probably a coincidence. I think that can be at least considered. I think also we're going to find out so much more now that they have the suspect in terms of interviewing his closest friends, his closest associates. It's difficult for people to hide their resentment and not to make statements. And so I think they're going to find all sorts of information about what he was truly thinking and this grudge that he seemed to have harbored.
Yeah, that's a perfect point to end for now on the discussion. We're going to continue it in just a moment. Jen Coffindeffer, Tommy Pope, thank you much. Stand by, please. As we hit a break, of course, we're thinking about the family and the friends who love this couple so much, Dr. Spencer and Monique Tepe. And you wonder about his work colleagues. We know the panic that they had so early on that morning. It makes you wonder, did they have any indications that something wasn't right with Monique's ex? We'll talk about that next. Plus, some friends of former battalion chief Kevin West take the stand to testify against him in his murder trial for the death of his wife, Marcy.
Did he say something to you about Marcy's passing?
Yes.
What did he say?
That he was relieved and that a burden had been lifted off his shoulders.
The Court TV podcast will return.
Our boss did not report for work. We haven't been able to get a hold of him for 3 hours. We are on site and we can hear.
Okay, I just the body. Our friend wasn't answering his phone. We just did a wellness check. We just can't hear it. He appears dead. Okay. There's blood. He's laying next to his bed, off of his bed, and there's blood.
911 calls from the co-workers of Dr. Spencer Tepe were at the center of this investigation. The arrest of his wife Monique Tepe's ex-husband is what continues trending this morning. Now, Michael McKee sits behind bars. This is the defendant here after a nearly 2-week-long manhunt in connection to the murders of his ex-wife Monique Tepe and her husband Spencer Tepe. Here's what we know about this defendant. Police say he was taken into custody without incident. McKee is his last name, was married to Monique Tepe in 2015. 2 years later, they filed for divorce. That was in 2017. He graduated from Ohio State University. He's listed as a 2014 graduate of Ohio State's medical school as well. So he was working as a vascular surgeon, we understand, and won't be working for the foreseeable future till this case is resolved, that's for sure. We know that we've got 2 doctors here. So we have this defendant who's a medical doctor, and we have one of the victims who's a dentist, and it was his co-workers who really were sounding the alarm bells early on. The morning that he didn't show up for work, office opens at 8 a.m. and at 9 a.m. they were calling 911. And they were saying it's really concerning that he and his wife weren't answering their phones, especially her. What if anything, should we read into that? Let's bring back in retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindeffer and welcome in criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Mario Gallucci. Jen, I'll start with you on this. Is this was something you were saying you were troubled by from the outset? Your thoughts now?
Right, absolutely. It was troubling that within well less than an hour, his co-workers were so concerned that they even called their boss, who was vacationing in Florida, and within less than an hour, a call to 911 was made. So that alerted me to the fact that they know something. There was something that made them on edge, I think, far beyond being a little bit late to a dental office. And now I think we're going to find out that maybe they knew information about concerns that she might have had.
Right, Jen, I'm with you. Mario, do you agree that that was really odd? There was so much panic so early, and it seemed just questionable. It seemed just odd to many of us that at 9 a.m. there would be 911 calls wanting a welfare check at the house. Your thoughts now seeing the arrest of the ex-husband. Does it make more sense to you?
So I agree with Jen. I think that we're going to find, that there's going to be a report that there was some information that there was something going on in the background here. One of the news outlets actually reported that Tepe's family knew immediately who was responsible for the death. I forget which news outlet it was, but what I think in the coming days, there's going to be a lot of information that comes out. It seems, the news outlets are reporting that it was uncharacteristic for him to be late, but, being late and then coming, calling 911, calling somebody in Florida or his boss, and then actually driving to the house to do your own welfare check. because you're not satisfied with the police response indicates to me that they had a heightened level of safety concern here. So in the coming days, I really believe we're going to have a lot more information come out on the relationship that was going on in the background.
Yes, you said that so well, Mario, a heightened sense of safety concern for these two. Yes, exactly. Jen, I want to go back to you on how this guy was caught. Police say it was through his car, that a neighbor's Nest camera took some video of this man around the window of the homicides going to a car. Police tracked the plate to Illinois. The car belongs to Dr. Michael McKee, the defendant here. Your thoughts on that detective work?
Right. It was well done. We knew there was so much video in and around that area with all these residents there, and then also with the street camera footage. The issue was, of course, for law enforcement is looking through all of that. It's hard to really put into words how tedious of work this is. It takes literally sitting in front of your camera and looking, or in front of your screen and looking at second after second for hours and hours of day. And we know there was a lot of footage, so that's a lot of officers that were involved. And I think that's why this took so long to solve.
Yeah, definitely. You know, and how about the fact that I think it's still hard to wrap your mind around. So this is a vascular surgeon we have as a defendant here. You know, and if he is the monster that, you know, police are saying he is, they're saying that he's the guy that did these homicides. If he is, how stunning is that he's saving lives day after day, and then police say he ended 2 lives. Mario, I want you to weigh in on that if you would, please.
So I find it very interesting that in their relationship, we don't have any evidence that there were ever any domestic incident reports that were filed. We haven't heard anything that there was trouble in their marriage other than it ended quite quickly. I think it was less than 2 years they were married. So it seems a little unbelievable that out of nowhere. But Jen said in the last segment that this could have been something that was festering for years and years and years. And now, you know, they're coming up on their 5th year anniversary. They have 2 children. It looks like they have a wonderful life. And, you know, the jealousy just overwhelmed him and caused him to do this. I mean, he didn't, you know, he took the time to do it in the middle of the night. He traveled, 500 miles, but he didn't think to, get a car that wasn't associated with him. So he wasn't really thinking that logically if he, you know, committed this crime and thought it out, but didn't think enough not to use his own vehicle. So I really believe that this was just a festering rage that was going on inside of him. If he can't have her, then nobody else will.
Yeah, exactly, Mary. I think so, too. That's really the one that makes sense of it, that it was building and building. And for whatever reason, now was a time, if he's the guy. Jen, I want to talk to you about the ballistics evidence. So we know 3 spent 9mm shell casings recovered at the scene, no firearm left at the scene. We haven't heard, I've been waiting, I keep searching. I was searching all day to see if investigators said anything about recovering a gun. Your thoughts, if they don't, let's just say they can't find a murder weapon, or any firearms belonging to this doctor. Is that at all detrimental to the case?
Well, a couple of things. When they said they found the vehicle, they also said they found evidence. And when I heard that, immediately I thought, did they find the gun? They didn't say that, as you said, Julie. They didn't say what the evidence was. But I wonder if there was any mapping, that he had printed anything out, or that gun. If they don't find the gun, of course, they can track possibly a gun to him. Look, these were precise shots, 1 to the chest on her and 2 other shots to him that were all kill shots. So when you look at that, did he practice at any ranges? What was he doing to prepare? Were there other guns he purchased? So I think they can track that aspect of the gun.
Right, if he purchased a firearm, yes, exactly. And if it was one that holds 9mm ammunition. Jen, great points. Mario, great points. We'll leave it here for just a moment. We're going to continue discussing this case throughout the day. We're going to hit a break here on opening statements. We've got more for you on the show. This is what's up next.
Did Kevin ever talk to you about his future plans with Cynthia?
Some of them, yes.
What sorts of things did he tell you?
He seemed very excited to be with her, that she was fun, and he wanted to take her to Roatan with us on the next trip that we went on.
Friends of former Battalion Chief Kevin West testify against him about him having an affair. That's next. Plus, defendant Nick Reiner reportedly has a theory about why he's accused of murdering his parents.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
Thanks for staying with us. This morning, we're shining our spotlight on the trial of a former fire chief who's accused of murdering his wife, as his friends testified why Kevin West didn't want to get a divorce. West is facing life in prison if he's convicted of murdering his wife, Marcy. He was having an affair with a woman named Cynthia Ward. Former colleagues testified Friday about West's marital problems and his reluctance to divorce his wife.
Did he express any reasons why he was reluctant to divorce Marcy?
Yes.
And what was that?
Financial.
Can you explain further?
Yeah. Every fireman and cop puts in a lot of years.
Objection, non-responsive, no foundation.
You can go ahead.
Thank you. It's like your worst nightmare. You've built a pension for 20 years, and then say your wife comes up to you and says she wants a divorce, right? By that time, you're ready to get out of the field. And now you're worried about getting rid of 50% of your stuff.
How would you describe Kevin and Marcy's relationship in the time leading up to her death?
I would describe it as rocky.
Did you know about Kevin's affair with Cynthia Ward?
Yes.
And when did you learn about it?
Probably September of 23.
Was that on a hunting trip?
Yes.
Okay. And did you know about the first time they had the affair?
I heard something, possibly, an affair.
Did you hear that from Kevin, or did you hear that from Cynthia?
From Kevin.
Did he say something to you about Marcy's passing?
Yes.
What did he say?
That he was relieved and that a burden had been lifted off his shoulders.
Kevin described a very unhappy marriage with a lack of intimacy, frequent conflicts over finances, disputes over parenting their children. He very much wanted to end the marriage.
Here to discuss, attorney and former prosecutor Tommy Pope knows a little something about spouses doing dramatic things over an affair. He famously prosecuted Susan Smith, who we know killed her children in order to be with another man. So Tommy, what do you think about Kevin West's friends and what they said to the jury?
I was thinking particularly, law enforcement circles, firemen, there's a brotherhood. And so it's got to be tough, but, firemen, police officers are normally also wired by justice and by doing what's right. So I think they're calling it for what it is and shooting straight. I didn't feel like, even the guy that was getting objected to, I spent my 25 years to get my retirement too. And again, I don't plan on divorcing Kim, but I know what he's saying. You worked and worked and worked, and you're finally ready to come in for a landing. It certainly doesn't justify it, but it actually shows a little more of a motive. And I was thinking about the young lady at the end. You're always downplaying, how your wife, you don't have a relationship, how they're difficult, because the grass always looks greener. So that's not unusual. It's really kind of characteristic. Anybody's having an affair, somehow, whoever they're having the affair with understands them much better than their spouse ever could. So, unfortunately, all these pieces are playing together for him to have done exactly what he's accused of.
Right, Tommy. Backing up to the first comment you had about this, an important one, it's a brotherhood. Those who serve in law enforcement, firefighters, they're united. It's all for one for all kind of mentality. And for them to come in, if I'm on that jury, that's going to say a lot to me with these guys, because you know, as you pointed out, they don't want to be there. That's the last place they want to be, testifying against their colleague and friend. I mean, I am sure this was a day they all dreaded and very much hated to have to be part of, but you know, when you get a subpoena, you don't really have a choice, as you know. Do you think that their testimony will carry more weight with the jury, perhaps, because of that brotherhood?
I think if the prosecutor chooses somehow in closing, and you could do it in a sentence like you just did, you know, he said, and I want to point you to the testimony of his co-workers, and, you know, fire department is a brotherhood, and it was very difficult for them to come here. I think if the prosecutor says something like that, then that amplifies the credibility. And so I think that it will, and again, that's obviously just a piece of the puzzle. That's, you know, the why, or what could have happened, motive or something of that nature. So I think that it will strengthen the prosecution's case.
Yeah, definitely, Tommy. How about the idea that this very much could come down to which expert the jury believes more? Is that a little scary to you? You know, as a former prosecutor, if you believe that this guy did this and made it look like, oh, it was just a seizure when in fact it was strangulation, should these prosecutors be at all nervous of that fact?
Julie, I think I was, you know, I always tell you I was the Doogie Howser of prosecutors. I got elected when I was 30, and maybe I was a little bit naive.
Young superstar.
I was a little bit naive, you know, but you know, I used to always think that experts just, you know, you call balls and strikes, and they come in. If it's there, it's there. And as a prosecutor, I never wanted to overreach, you know, and have someone that was innocent that I was pushing too hard to find guilty. But I now know in my sage wisdom with my gray hair that you could get an expert to come in for the right price and say almost anything. And so the key for me is cross-examination, effective cross-examination, you know, pointing out, you know, the motivation of the expert and why they would be there or not. To me, you know, and I don't know if it's been explained, but the bruising and the damage, you know, to the throat that was consistent with strangulation, I think is critical. And, you know, oftentimes too, they do weigh in, juries weigh in more with their local, you know, medical examiner or local coroner than perhaps, you know, out-of-town experts.
Right, right. That's another good point if it's someone familiar to them. Tommy Pope, thanks so much. Great insights. Sure. This trial rolls on today. We'll keep you posted on the developments. Up next on Opening Statements, we're taking you to California, where accused killer Nick Reiner believes that he's a victim of conspiracy. We'll talk about it next.
This is the Court TV podcast.
What we've learned, and you can take this to the bank, is that pursuant to the laws of this state, pursuant to the law in California, Nick Reiner is not guilty of murder. Print that. Print.
But now Nick Reiner is claiming that someone is out to get him. That is the latest headline. So let's talk about this. TMZ is reporting that someone close to the 32-year-old says that Reiner knows he killed his parents, Rob and Michelle, but doesn't understand why he's in jail. According to TMZ, Reiner believes the people who put him behind bars are engaged in a, quote, conspiracy against him. Reports surfacing before the new year that Reiner had his medication changed or adjusted before the deaths of his mom and dad. But it remains unclear when that medication was, in fact, changed. So let's talk about this reported conspiracy theory, how it could impact the case. Many of us trial watchers invested in this case think we're going to see a case of not guilty by reason of insanity. If you listen to the way Alan Jackson phrased that, he said he's not guilty of murder, purposefully choosing his words. Many believe, you know, in order to put forward this particular defense. But will it fly you know, you have to have expert testimony to say that you didn't know right from wrong at the time that the murders occurred. So let's discuss that. Let's bring in forensic psychiatrist Dr. Carol Lieberman and criminal defense attorney Mario Gallucci. Dr. Carol, starting with the mental state of this young man, you know, we know he's had lots of trouble with substance abuse. But we've heard very little. When we hear about him rehabbing, it was always rehab treatments, you know, for the substance abuse issues. We haven't heard anything about mental health struggles or him being, you know, hospitalized because of a lack of sanity. So what do you make of this coming up now?
Well, this case exposes the weaknesses of the mental health system. I mean, that is one of the problems. Yes, he was put in rehabs 17 or 18 times. And clearly they were focused on his drug abuse, not really his underlying problems. And whether that's the underlying psychological problems, you know, his emotions and so on, his childhood, his traumas and all of that, or whether it's his diagnosis. Now, the diagnosis seems to be schizoaffective disorder. And that was the first paper that I wrote when I was a chief resident at Bellevue. My first paper in a peer-reviewed journal was Schizoaffective Disorder Defies the Dichotomy and Keeps DSM-3 Pondering, meaning that schizoaffective disorder is you have the symptoms of schizophrenia, which include delusions and hallucinations, and affective, that means you have a mood disorder, so it's like bipolar. So it's a kind of combination of the two. And you can't actually be diagnosed with schizophrenia and bipolar, but if you have these symptoms that combine the two, it's schizoaffective disorder. And clearly this was missed during his rehabs and any other treatment he had. And there were so many places along the way that this could have been stopped. And I blame it on the mental health system.
Oh, that's an interesting take. Okay. Mario, so tell me, working with that as a defense attorney with schizoaffective disorder, has been reported as his diagnosis, is this something that you see as a viable defense, Mario, as a criminal defense attorney for Nick Reiner?
Oh, absolutely. The first thing I would do is hire Dr. Nancy Lieberman to evaluate him as an expert. I mean, the conspiracy theory he's discussing right now is part of the mental disease. He truly believes that he's part of a conspiracy. It shows a deterioration in his mental state. He's already got a diagnosis. He's been treated in facilities over 15 times. A lot of times we see these individuals who are addicted to drugs, but they're using the drugs to treat the underlying mental condition. They don't understand that they have an underlying mental condition, and the drugs actually help them. So this was missed by the community of therapists and counselors that were hired, and they did recently change his medication. And that could be a big part of the defense here, that he was going along fine, and then a month ago, they changed his medication for whatever reason, and now he became more violent. We heard about the fight he had with his parents at Conan O'Brien's house. So, he was deteriorating at a very rapid rate, and nobody was able to really accommodate this. And it's tragic. It really is tragic. But this young man does suffer from a mental disease or defect, and absolutely that's going to be the defense.
Mario, thank you for that. Let's take a look at what's at stake for Nick Reiner. So in California, if you're convicted of doing a murder, you can be sentenced to life without parole. If you're found not guilty by reason of insanity for the crime of murder, then you're committed to a state mental hospital for an indefinite period of time. Potentially can be the rest of one's life. All depends on the progress that they make with treatment. So it's not that they walk free. It's just that they're committed to a state-run hospital to get the treatment they need. Dr. Carol, back to schizoaffective disorder. Are these people who are afflicted with this generally violent people?
Not necessarily, no. Of course, if you hear voices, which is part of the schizo part, delusions and hallucinations, you could be hearing some voice telling you to kill somebody. But on the whole, no. And, this is just a real, supposedly, yes, he had told a doctor, a psychiatrist, that sometimes there are side effects. And you need to be very careful about how you manage the medications. You need to find the ones that works for a particular patient. And so supposedly he was saying that he was gaining weight and he didn't like a particular antipsychotic that he was on. But so what the psychiatrist did, to the extent that I'm aware of this, what the psychiatrist did was switch his medications. And you don't just get off one medication one day and then start another medication the other day. You have to taper off and you have to gradually get on. And ideally, you put the person in the hospital, because if someone has a severe mental illness like schizoaffective disorder and a history of drug abuse, you don't do this out in the wild, give them another prescription and just send them on their way. Because this is a very dangerous time, a very unbalanced time, and so that was another example. And this is of what's wrong with the mental health system. Psychiatrists have become pill pushers, and this is what they do. And I'm a psychiatrist, and I am appalled at my profession.
Yeah, well, appreciate you, the hot take, Dr. Carroll. I really do. Thank you for that. Yeah, because no doubt this issue will come up in this trial. Good defense attorneys like Mario are going to raise these kinds of issues. Mario, I want you to take a look at something that could become somewhat of maybe a little problem that the defense will have to deal with. Something that Nick Reiner said in the past when he went on the Dopey podcast. Here's the clip.
How'd you get Wellbutrin? Did it cop it on the street? The way I got Wellbutrin is actually really fun. I was at a Lena Lodge, and I don't know if I told this last week, but they refused to give me meds. So to prove I was crazy, because they were like, you don't need any meds. And I was like freaking out. And I was like, you don't think I need meds? And they're like, yeah, we think you're just all up to an act here, and this is all just fake. And I said, okay.
Okay, fake being crazy to get the meds. Mario, how do you deal with that if you're his lawyer?
So I would say that's part of his delusion, that he's making this up, and it's part of his mental disease, a defect this schizoaffective disorder, and that he's making up these things in order to get his medication, in order to keep this delusion going. He's obviously suffers from this disease. This has been going on for years. He's been treated for years. There's been documentation that he's been treated by doctors for this, and he's been in rehab. So this is just one little blip on an otherwise, a person that suffers from a serious disease, a significant disease. As the doctor just said, this is not, I'm a little paranoid.
Mm-hmm. Right. This is a big deal. Mario, appreciate that. Dr. Carroll, appreciate all the insights you shared. We'll leave it here for now. We'll, of course, report any more updates we get on this big case that we know has rocked Hollywood and people all over the world that loved Rob Reiner's work. Our hearts go out to his children, the loss of him and his wife, Michelle. That's all for this episode of Opening Statements, my friends. I'm your host, Julie Grant, and it's been great being with you. On this show, I am calling out any pants on fire moments in our big trials and true crime stories, and I want you to come along with me. Opening Statements is live every weekday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern on Court TV. Thank you for downloading this episode. Please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends. You can watch past shows anytime you like on CourtTV.com.